Okay, welcome to the Apple Podcast, episode 74, and this is Lex at maxfuture.com, and this is a very interesting week in Apple news. Today is June 3rd, 2011, so let's get to some of the interesting stories. The first story is that it's pretty clear that on Monday, this Monday, the 6th of June, at WWDC, Steve Jobs will take stage and make all sorts of great announcements. And invitations went out earlier this week, and a press release came out earlier this week from Apple saying that Steve Jobs, who's been out on sick leave, will actually be doing the keynote announcement. And this is great news, particularly for those people who admire Steve Jobs and think he's done a tremendous job at Apple and in the computer industry, because he's been out sick, and this is obviously a good sign. It means that he's doing well enough to attend. So Apple also made it clear that at WWDC, Steve Jobs will be discussing three things. One is Lion, Lion is the operating system for the Mac, the next version. Also, Steve Jobs is going to be discussing iOS 5, which is the next operating system for the iDevices, the iPhone, the iPad, the iPod Touch. And finally, Apple said that they're going to be discussing iCloud, which is the long-rumored cloud service that Apple is supposed to unveil. So this is huge information, and information that I think is really going to make a lot of Apple fans very happy next week. So let's discuss what that could be. Well, I think the most intriguing thing that's going to be discussed on June 6th during WWDC is iCloud. And nobody knows exactly what Apple's iCloud service will be, but I put up a blog post on maxfuture.com where I predict what iCloud will ultimately be. First, iCloud will definitely be better than Amazon and Google's recent cloud music service. To recap, Amazon gives you free 5 gigabytes of storage to upload and stream your own digital music. Amazon also gives you the ability to add any new purchases of digital media from Amazon to this digital service without counting against your gigabytes of storage. You can even buy extra storage for $1 per gigabyte, so 100 gigabytes costs $100 per year, and 200 gigabytes is $200 per year, etc., up to 1,000 gigabytes or a terabyte for $1,000 a year. Amazon also gives you a promotion where you get 20 gigabytes free for a year with a digital album purchase. Now, recently, this cost only 99 cents last week if you got the Lady Gaga promotion. There, if you just purchased her album for a mere 99 cents from Amazon, you got a free 20 gigabyte upgrade for a year. Now, Google also announced its digital locker, but it's just giving you free 20 gigabytes of storage for your music and streaming, but no selling of music. This is pretty strange. So here is how Apple will top Amazon and Google. First, Apple will not require you to upload your music that is in iTunes already. This is what I think is going to happen. Regardless of where you purchased or did not purchase your digital music, Apple will scan your iTunes library, and if Apple has those music tracks, they will make them available to stream from your iCloud account. Some people on Leo Laporte's Mac Weekly show speculated that Apple will only let you stream the music that Apple already sold you. I think Apple will do more than that because many people, or most people, have only a small fraction of their iTunes library content as purchased from iTunes. Apple is going to blow everyone away by giving you online tracks of your music without making you upload the tracks and including music you ripped from CDs and downloaded from glorious Napster 10 plus years ago. This brings me to point 2. Apple will charge you a flat rate per year to stream your music. Apple will charge something under $99 per year to let you stream your music from anywhere to your Macintosh, iPad, iPhone, and iPod Touch. Now, Apple probably made a deal with the music labels where they get a cut of that fee depending on how often a track is played on the stream service. Everyone wins. The music labels get revenue from Napster tracks that they never got revenue from, and Apple customers get the ability to access their music from wherever they are. One permutation to this is that Apple might let you download your online tracks. That is what Amazon allows in addition to the streaming. But maybe Apple will limit the downloading to only a certain amount of computers you register with iCloud to prevent piracy. For example, the music labels wouldn't want a student in the dorm to give all his friends or her friends the password to his or her iCloud account and download all the music. Third, also, I think Apple will add something new. For an additional fee per year or per month, Apple will probably allow you to stream your music you never purchased, similar to the Spotify service or Microsoft's Zune streaming service. This would give you access to all new music as a stream service. With services like Pandora, which are popular, Apple knows it has to have a streaming service that exposes people to new music. Finally, I think Apple may provide a streaming service of movie and TV content that is very similar to Netflix. For a fee like $8 per month, Apple will probably allow you to stream movies and TV to your computer, Apple TV, iPad, iPhone, and iPod Touch. These 4 aspects of iCloud will put Apple far ahead of Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Netflix, and Pandora. Here is the thing. Like Michael in The Godfather, Apple will take care of all its competitors on Monday, June 6, 2011. Now, it looks like this music streaming service from Apple is really going to happen because yesterday CNET reported that Apple has signed the last of the 4 major record companies to its iCloud service, which will be officially announced probably on Monday, June 6th. Now, what CNET said, or Mac Rumors said, is that this represents the final step before Apple is able to launch its iCloud service. So, according to CNET, the labels will get 58% of the revenue payments. Publishers will get 12% of the revenue, while Apple will retain 30%. They also said that the streaming won't be available on Monday, but will be offered soon. And at first, Apple will only store music in iCloud that was purchased in iTunes, but Apple is looking to include songs outside iTunes sometime in the future. So, we're going to have to see what this looks like, but it looks very promising. Okay, so Max Rumor reports that the iCloud will be only $25 a year for the service of the music streaming. So this is what Max Rumor reports on June 2nd, 2011, is that the iCloud service will function as many have expected. This is what it says, offering iTunes users the ability to save their purchases to iCloud and then being able to listen to it from any web browser. And it says that Apple will be offering a free trial for those who buy music from iTunes and later expects to charge about $25 a year for the service. The LA Times, according to the story, says that Apple will also be selling advertising around its iCloud service. It's not clear what form the advertising would be. Now, I read somewhere else that initially you're only going to be able to add music that you buy from iTunes to your iCloud service, but that Apple hopes to be able to license at some point the ability to add things that you already own, whether or not you bought it from Apple, to your cloud. And I really hope they go that way, because that would be the killer feature. See, the bottom line is Apple has to make deals with the music companies to get this sort of deal. So we'll have to see. Now, one weird twist to the iCloud stories, and we'll find out on Monday, is that the Time Capsule device might have some role to play in it. Now, Time Capsule is that really great device, which is essentially a Wi-Fi router that also has a hard drive built into it. And I remember when it first came out several years ago, it was such a great idea, you know, that you would have this all-in-one thing. You have the hard drive in there for backup, plus, you know, internet hookup and Wi-Fi networking. And TUAW.com reports, and this is the headline of the story on June 2nd, upcoming time capsule tied to iCloud caches software updates. And what TUAW says is that the Apple stores are running low on stocks of airport devices, and they say that this is usually a strong indicator of an upcoming product refresh. They also then cite the 9to5Mac website, which says that its sources claim a refresh is indeed imminent, and apparently a new version of Time Capsule is going testing at Apple, which will cache software updates for any devices that regularly connect to its Wi-Fi network. The device will, quote, learn, end quote, which devices regularly connect to it and silently download updates for them in the background without user intervention. So that's kind of interesting. It might be a way to speed up wireless backups. It goes on to say this functionality will work for both Macs and iOS devices, enabling users to install software updates from local caches instead of waiting for them to download first. I think this is really clever. I mean, let's say you have, because we're now going away from DVD discs or any CDs for software, right? So the question is, let's say you have to get the Lion operating system. Well, wouldn't it be great if it could like cache to your time capsule device? It goes on to say that John Gruber of Daring Fireball also speculates this could enable devices such as the iPad and iPhone to perform software updates without being tethered to a Mac. And that's a fantastic point by John Gruber, because look, there is a big push to make the iPhone and the iPad completely independent from hard tethering to a Mac. You know, and for me, I got to tell you, I think I'm there because, one, it's easy for me on the iPhone or iPad to update all apps. Like, you can update all your apps just from the App Store. So the only other reason I was really hooking up my iPhone or iPad to my Mac was to sync podcast. But I have this great podcaster app that remarkably can just, you know, update all my subscribed podcasts from the iPhone. And what's really wild about that is that it can even do it over 3G, and it's not limited by the 20 megabyte cap that the iPod app does. But look, I'm digressing here. So the article goes on to say 9to5Mac points out this technology already exists in Mac OS X server. It says that although it's in a more simplistic form, that downloads software updates of all types rather than device-specific varieties. It goes on to say they also speculate that these new time capsules could be tied into iCloud, caching music in a user's online storage locker or large frequently accessed files, and also providing user backups to iCloud. It goes, so this is interesting. I mean, I think this totally makes sense, that iCloud would be more than just software, and that you'd have some sort of Wi-Fi router that was really cutting edge that could do more. TUAW says no one knows for certain when such devices will debut, nor can we say with any certainty that that they even exist. All we know thus far is that current stocks of airport devices are dwindling at some Apple stores, and while WWDC is expected to focus on software, that doesn't specifically preclude the introduction of new hardware like a time capsule update. All right. Well, good story, and I really hope there's this device. I wouldn't mind a time capsule. Okay, so some people think that the Apple iCloud service, which will be announced on Monday, will really put a hamper on Google's plans to excel in the internet space. And there was a story out by itmanagement.earthweb.com entitled "How Apple's iCloud Will Rain on Google's Parade," and it makes some really good points. It says that, look, Apple's iCloud service, expected to be unveiled next week, completes a perfect storm of features that could accelerate Apple's growing dominance of computing and seriously undermine Google's cloud strategy. You know, it points out in the article that the company, Apple, has spent the last 2 years secretly building a $1 billion 500,000 square foot data center in North Carolina. It says that the new facility is 5 times larger than its existing data center in New Jersey, and that Apple has also massively expanded data center capacity in Silicon Valley. Now, here's the good point. It says that everything about iCloud is officially secret except the name. And it says, I believe Apple will innovate on some neat tricks. For example, Apple may enable constant backup of all user data and possibly synchronization across devices. Apple is also expected to announce a new version of iOS 5. This would enable users to walk away from their PCs, then pick up where they left off on an iPad or even an iPhone. Lost or stolen devices would not involve the loss of data. So this is a very bold prediction by this website, and it makes some really interesting points about where the future of computing should go. It goes on to say Apple will almost certainly offer the service to enable users to store iTunes, purchase music and movies, as well as personal data files like documents, emails, pictures, and videos, then access them from the iPhones, iPads, Macs, or PCs. It says one key aspect of the service will include music, movies, and TV shows, which Apple currently dominates with iTunes, but which both Amazon and Google intend to make inroads on with recently announced streaming services. So, you know, basically the article thinks that Apple will have better selection for streaming music, at least initially. It says Apple has reportedly inked deals with the big music companies. As a result, and Google hasn't, and Amazon and Google hasn't been able to compete with iTunes by forcing music labels to cut prices. As a result, neither company has successfully landed deals with the major labels. So, you know, it goes on to say Apple's generally in a better position to negotiate arrangements with the music companies, with music, movie, and TV studios than Amazon or Google, because the company is inclined to charge more and also take stronger action to prevent piracy and unauthorized usage. It says that Hollywood hates Silicon Valley, but they hate Apple the least, which is interesting because I think Apple figured out how to work with Hollywood and the music companies. And the thing is, Apple's about making money. You know, I'll say this. You know, what people don't really understand about Amazon, look at Amazon's financial numbers. Amazon makes very little profit. The reason everyone loves Amazon is because you can buy cheap things from Amazon without paying tax, and they sell everything. But think about Amazon's business model. They don't make their own products. They have other people make products, and they sell them. But Amazon tries to have as many customers as possible, so they keep cutting the price. But Amazon hardly makes any money at all. They make under $1 billion a year in profit. Apple makes $6 billion in 1 quarter in profit. And so, I think this sort of feeds into why Hollywood and the music companies don't like Amazon, because Amazon's business isn't to keep cutting prices on the belief that, hey, if we just have enough customers, we'll make some money somehow. It goes on to say iCloud essentially erases Google's main argument in favor of Chromebooks, at least as far as Apple is concerned. The argument is that your data is always safe no matter what, and it seriously undermines Google's long-standing cloud-based Google Docs service. I think this makes really good points. It says once Apple automatically duplicates everything in the cloud, Google Docs just doesn't seem all that interesting anymore. So I don't know. People at Google must be really terrified by Apple's WWDC conference, because I think on Monday, June 6th, Steve Jobs is just going to crush its competition. It says iCloud also has the potential to turn iPad into a real computer. Right now, you need to plug the iPad to a PC before using it the first time. And it says the device syncs with iTunes as part of the mandatory setup process. However, iCloud Sync could serve as an alternative, allowing some users to use iPads as their one and only device. It's also likely that updates will occur over the air rather than via USB connection with PC. Look, I think this is absolutely right. I think iOS 5, which is the next operating system for the iPad and the iPhone, will clearly have syncing over the internet. That's clearly one of the biggest features that people want. And it makes sense to roll that out at the same time as iCloud, which is the music service, because the whole point will be that Apple's now a cloud entity. And Apple as a cloud entity does pose a big risk to Google. Now, this article goes on to say, speaking of real computers, it also makes Macs more appliance-like. And this is another good point. Apple's upcoming Lion version of OS X will offer two new features called Resume, and AirDrop, which will restore, I don't know if it's Resume or Resume, but it says Resume and AirDrop, which will restore systems to a specific point in time and enable Mac-to-Mac file transfer, respectively. This will all probably happen versus iCloud. So this is, I'm telling you, Monday is going to be an epic day. Because again, remember, three big things are being announced: Lion, iCloud, and iOS 5. And I think Apple is going to try to unify the three, because Lion clearly has the look and feel of iOS. And what's going on is iOS and Lion are getting closer and closer together. So it's going to be really an exciting day. Okay, one of the other big announcements that people are now predicting will occur on June 6th, Monday, is that Apple will announce that Twitter, that great social networking service where you can tweet 140 characters at a time, will be integrated in iOS 5. And there's already signs of that. And I think the best reporting on that comes from M.G. Siegler over at TechCrunch. He's got an article on May 31st that says Twitter getting photos in order ahead of iOS 5 integration. And he says, look, yesterday we first reported that Twitter was on the verge of launching their own photo sharing service. That report has since been confirmed by Liz Gaines, who happens to work for All Things D, which is hosting a conference where Twitter's CEO Dick Costolo was planning to announce the news. So yeah, sources familiar with the matter confirmed. And now we know a bit more, Mr. Siegler says. He says, first of all, this move is a direct assault on services like TwitPic and YFrog. And he goes on to say, with Twitter pictures, you'll be able to upload from twitter.com and the clients, and you'll get a nice tidy URL that links to your picture. We've heard that this might use the twim.com URL. And then he goes on to say, let's jump to the end of the article. We've heard from multiple sources that Twitter is likely to have a big-time partner for such a service, Apple. Specifically, we're hearing that Apple's new iOS 5 will come with an option to share images to Twitter baked into the iOS. This would be similar to the way you can currently share videos on YouTube with one click to iOS. Obviously, a user would have to enable this feature by logging in with their Twitter credentials in iOS. There would be a send to Twitter option for pictures stored on your device. And so this is kind of interesting, because I think Apple will do this, because Apple's in competition with Google, and right now it has Google Maps and YouTube integrated into the iOS, and Apple tried to sort of get Facebook integrated, and then Facebook essentially screwed Apple by dropping the Facebook connection for ping. So it would be actually kind of genius for Twitter to become friends with Apple. If you think about it, it makes great strategic partnership, because Twitter, in a way, is competing with Google and Facebook. Twitter, Facebook, and Google are the three really search social functions on the internet. And I'm going to make a prediction here. I predict that Twitter could be a takeover target or an acquisition target for Apple. Think about it. Apple really sort of tried to get into the social networking thing with Ping on the music service in iTunes, and that never really took off. But the original plan for it was to work with Facebook. Well, Twitter's a private company. I mean, Apple could acquire Twitter. How much do you think Twitter is worth? Let's say Twitter's worth $20 billion or $10 billion. Apple has $65 billion. Apple could outright buy Twitter. That would be kind of huge, because that's a huge audience right there. But at the very least, they're making a partnership. The only thing that really sucks about Twitter is that it doesn't really make a profit, right? I mean, there's maybe some advertisement, but it's not a very profitable company. So, expect that to be part of the big announcement at WWDC, that Twitter is a big partner with Apple. Okay, just in advance of WWDC, Apple has released an app for WWDC so that you can keep track of all the events that you want to take place at. And it's only $0. It's free. And so basically it allows you to reserve time at the labs if you're a developer. You can also see the sessions and lab schedules. You can create your own WWDC schedule. If you're not familiar, WWDC is the multi-day conference that starts June 6th in San Francisco. It costs, I think, $1,500 for the tickets you buy from Apple. The tickets sold out very quickly. And it's basically a developers conference, but this is where Apple's going to make its big announcement regarding its software. So it's really nice to see that Apple sort of takes advantage of its own technology by offering a nice app that will, allow you to, keep track of what's going on at the conference. Okay, the one area that Apple could definitely grow in is the enterprise, and the enterprise is, big business and the government. And look, for years, the federal government has been dominated by Microsoft, Intel, and BlackBerry's RIM. So there was a really interesting article in the Washington Post that came out this week on May 30th entitled "Federal Government Loosens Its Grip on the BlackBerry." And the article is really well written and makes some great points, but it starts off saying, somewhere in America, perhaps at this very moment, a bad guy is under video surveillance. He's being watched every moment, every step, but not on a little TV. That's so 2009. Instead, a special agent from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is keeping tabs on an iPad. So this is huge because, we've seen President Obama with iPad, and it looks like more and more people are using iPads in the government. It says, this is not a movie. This is not a Steve Jobs dream. This is the federal government 2.0, where technology upgrades no longer come at a little house on the prairie pace. Even President Obama, a BlackBerry devotee, has upgraded. He now owns an iPad, and it has been on his desk and under his arm. So the point of this is that there's a major change going on, and enterprise, particularly the federal government, is realizing that technology is changing and that the technology that dominated before is not the technology of the future. And according to this article, like major federal agencies like the GSA are even actually dumping BlackBerry RIM and Microsoft Outlook and Microsoft Exchange and embracing Gmail. It says here that the General Services Administration is in the process of moving 17,000 employees onto Gmail. So this is huge changes, and it looks like the iPad is being embraced. It says here, analysts and government officials say the demand for consumer technologies is coming from two directions. At the top, agency directors and senior officials are using iPads, Android phones, or web-based email in their personal lives and asking IT administrators why they can't use them at work. But the bigger push is coming from frontline workers who see the value consumer technology could add to their working life, making them more mobile and less tied to an office. So this is huge, because what it's saying is that the iPad and other new technologies are penetrating government. So this is clearly someplace that Apple can continue to grow in, and I think this is a real sign of change in our country. Okay, so we knew that the Fifth Avenue Apple Store was a huge moneymaker for Apple, but there's new data that shows just how successful and important it is. 9to5Mac has an article on May 30th that's entitled "The Iconic Fifth Avenue Apple Store is New York's Top Photo Attraction." So basically, a researcher named Eric Fisher went on Flickr, and you can mine metadata on Flickr regarding photos, and he created an amazing heat map, which you can see if you look at the video version of this podcast. And basically the heat map shows that the number one attraction that gets millions of photo snaps is the Apple Fifth Avenue store, the Glass Cube store, which is open 24 hours a day. And so, there's lots of attractions in New York, but it seems that the thing that is getting snapped constantly is the Fifth Avenue store. So, this just shows how powerful Apple's retail operation is. Okay, so Lion, the next operating system for the Mac, is probably going to be launched next week during WWDC, because the beta has been out for a while and developers have been using it, and so it's pretty much mature. Well, the good news is that some of the people who develop apps for the Mac have gotten their apps ready for Lion, and one of my favorite apps that I use is 1Password, and according to blog.aligebits.com, 1Password 3.6 is in beta testing, and it's going to be very soon a free update for version 3 owners. And it's going to basically work on Lion. The article says, quote, "We pounced on Mac OS X 10.7 Lion as soon as Apple unleashed it upon developers for testing. Lion is scheduled to ship sometime this summer, but 1Password 3.6 is primed and ready for it, including an all-new Safari extension with a revamped interface that we introduced in our Chrome extension last November. As of this blog post, our extensions for Chrome and Firefox work fine with the current versions on Lion 2. Check out Dave's post last weekend for a little more info on this new design." So this is great news, because 1Password is one of my favorite apps. Essentially, it stores all the passwords that you want for websites and apps and all that, and it's integrated with browsers. So when you get to some online login and where you've created a complicated password, all you do is launch your 1Password app, type in the password for that 1Password program, and then 1Password puts in the difficult and complicated password that you created that you can no longer remember its name. So it's a great app, and now it works with Snow Leopard. Okay, so in terms of innovation, Apple Insider has a great article about the future of the iPhone and how dynamic it's going to be. In an article on June 2nd, Apple Insider says that Apple is investigating dynamic location traffic-aware iPhone calendar alerts. And what it says is that the future iPhone software could provide dynamic GPS-enabled calendar alerts and alarms that could identify a user's location and offer relevant information, such as estimated travel time. And it says that using GPS in a user's calendar events, the system could determine how long it will take for the person to travel to their scheduled event. The iPhone software could then alert the user accordingly, allowing ample time to travel and meet the scheduled deadline. It then says, using a GPS signal, the iPhone could even determine travel time based on external factors such as current or historical traffic conditions. It says that Apple's system would provide users with the best route based on this data and alert them accordingly. So this is pretty far out stuff. I mean, I can't really get my head completely around this, but it sounds like, you know, based on where you're moving to and what you're near, things are going to go into your calendar and calculations are going to be made. Okay, so one of the big announcements this week at All Things Digital, which is Walt Mossberg's conference that he runs out of the Wall Street Journal, is that Microsoft unveiled the next version of Windows for its computers called Windows 8. And it's not only going to be for the computer, it's also going to be for tablet devices, but not for smartphones. Instead, you know, Windows 7 Mobile is going to be for that. So what is Windows 8? Well, I listened to Leo Laporte's Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, who's a big Microsoft booster. And basically, Windows 8 is essentially going to be this like tile-like interface that goes over what is Windows 7. So you're still going to have the traditional Windows operating system in the background, and you can access it. But when you have a Windows 8 computer or tablet, you're going to have like these big blocks of tiles that will represent things like the browser, the store, an app, and you're going to be able to just navigate tiles through touch. So the big thing that Windows 8 brings to computers are touch interfaces and tiles. But this interface is just sort of like a veneer, sort of like Windows Explorer that you use for navigation. It's just going to be on the surface, and underneath you're still going to have Windows operating system. And Cult of Mac has a story that says Windows 8 will lose to iOS because Microsoft just can't let go of the past. And its point is that unlike Apple, which made the cut and didn't bring its operating system for the Mac to tablets or to the iPhone, Microsoft refuses to do that. Microsoft wants to keep its old operating system. And I guess Cult of Mac's point is that because of that, it'll be, you know, it just never will be good. Because by trying to be historical and have your operating system work with every old computer, you're not going to make a really sleek operating system for mobile devices like tablets and smartphones. So, I mean, here's a key point that Cult of Mac makes. It says, Microsoft wants Windows 8 to be all things to all people. They want it to run on tablets. They want it to run on PCs. They want it to run on Intel processors. They want it to run on ARM processors. They want you to be able to use the tablet interface on a PC. They want you to be able to run PC software on a tablet. They want apps to run on full screen. They want them to run in Windows. They want Windows 8 to be an ecosystem for the cutting edge in mobile apps.
They want Windows 8 to be backwards compatible back to Windows 95. It goes on to say it's just too much, and it's all going to result in user confusion. Want to buy a tablet with long battery life? Make sure to buy a Windows 8 tablet with an ARMS chip, unless you want to run software made for Intel chips, in which case you'll have to buy a tablet with an x86 core. With Windows 8, Microsoft is going to fragment their own operating system in a way that won't be intuitive or understandable to 90% of the tablet buyers. This is a really valid point. It goes on to say Apple understood the perils of this form from the start. That's why the iPhone and iPad don't run OS X. They instead have a rich operating system built from the ground up to expertly leverage the distinct advantages of a touchscreen form factor. It's a strategy that has paid off for Apple to the tune of replacing Microsoft as the biggest and most valuable company in tech. So, I don't know. I think Windows 8 is going to be kind of a fiasco. That's my sense. Okay, so I want to sort of end this podcast now with a short little tutorial that I did on how to use Hype, which is this great app that I got that allows you to create HTML animation content. And so here's the little tutorial that I did. Hype is only $29, but it's really cool if you want to play around with creating websites with animation. So here we go. Okay, this is Lex at maxfuture.com, and I'm going to do a first look at this, I think this great program called Hype that just came out in the Mac App Store. It costs $29, and what it is, it's an easy way to create HTML5 websites with animation. And it's made by two people who left Apple and created this little company to do this sort of thing. And HTML5 is, a good way to replace Flash content on a website. Now, I'm not a programmer, but this is very easy to use. Again, it's called Hype 1.0. It's already been updated a couple of times. And the big thing about it is it has the ability to create animations using keyframes. So it's almost like a movie timeline. So I'm going to give you a view. The website is tumultco.com. And I'm just going to show you how easy it is. And I've got a couple of tips. Okay, so when you start Hype, this is what a brand new project looks like. Under File, you can go New and create a new project. And so it's a very sort of straightforward, simple screen. So in the bottom, you have your timeline. And up here are the key things that you want to use. For example, you can show the screens or hide the scenes. And scenes are important because think of scenes as different web pages that can be connected to each other. So let's try the first scene here. So for a scene, in any scene you can insert elements. So this is very straightforward. So let's say you want to create a website. But before you create the website, the first thing you want to do though is format your website for what kind of viewer you want, what kind of computer. And Hype has this great inspector over here, and the inspector is a very similar concept that you have all old Mac programs. And basically, if you go into the inspector, if you go over here, the first tab, document size, you get a choice of all sorts of default sizes. So let's say you were creating a website that was really geared for iPhone viewing. Well, you can just go down and format this project to be iPhone full portrait or iPhone Safari portrait. If you're going to make ultimately you might be able to use Flash to make a web app that works on your iPhone. And I guess for that you want full portrait mode. Or let's say if you just want want a large view on a web. So, or let's go medium. So let's go medium. It expands it. And so now we have a bigger website. So you start off with that and you decide, okay, I'm going to create like a fun website. So the key thing is you've got this one scene. So I'm going to call this scene 1. You can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it 1. And I'm going to insert an element. So what about some text? I have a choice of a box, text, button, textured button, image, or video. So that appears to be the only things you can insert, but later on I'll give you a little tip. You can actually do audio too. Although it doesn't say you can do audio, you can. So let's put some text in here. So I'm going to create, I'm going to call it Max Futures New Blog. So here we go. I created that, and it's very simple. You just drag this you just drag the text up where you want it, and you can format it. There's like a little guide right there, right in the middle, and you can you got all the font edit stuff that you if you want to use. So you go to Format, Font, Show Fonts, bring the fonts, and this is a very common concept. And I'm gonna pick a bigger font. I'm gonna go to 24 point, and there we go. So it's very much like Keynote. Oh, I missed the G over there. So let's there we go. We got 36 size. So I put it in the middle. I've got the alignment. So it's very much like Keynote. I'm gonna make the background a different color. So I'm gonna go over here. Let's see, oh yeah, here we go. Background. It's the second view. It's really of the whole document, and I'm gonna pick a different color. So let's make it orange. There we go. So I've got an orange website. And I can also add some content. So now, but let's just show you something very cool though, which is the animation feature. So what's really cool about this is that you can just record your dragging movements. So back down here, there's a record button. I'm going to press that. And I'm gonna move this forward, this timeline, the text timeline, to 3 seconds, okay? And right there, I'm gonna click. I want a keyframe there, so I'm gonna put a little anchor there, and so I'm gonna move this here, down here. So now, if I go back, actually. This is going to go up here. It's going to start up here, and so you see the little line. So now I'm going to test it out. You see it just drops down. Max Futures New Blog. So I have a little animation right there, and I can do other things with the animation. And if I go over back again to the inspector, it can record changes along the way. So for example, I want opacity at the beginning to be very little. So over here on the far right of the inspector, this is the the fourth button, and on the element inspector you've got the, I guess, the formatting for your elements. So I'm going to make it, when it first starts the animation, I'm going to have it be 0 opacity. And so then when it goes to 3, it goes to 100%. So this is like, you know, an easy way to create animation. Now if I want to see what it looks like, Hype has a built-in preview that uses your, I guess, default browser. So mine is Safari. I'm going to click preview. And there we go. I've got, oh, I have a typo. It's Max Future, not Mass Future. Okay, so I'm gonna fix that. Okay, we're gonna retype that. Max Future blog. And I was able to retype it, but it stays all there. So this is pretty cool. Let's test it again. Max Future's new blog. Now the cool things with Elements are you can do all sorts of interesting things. You can add like a button here. Let's add a button. So we've added a button over here, and I'm going to put, let's call the button video. So I'm going to have this button when somebody wants to click on it. I'm going to have it go to a video on another page. So this is how I do that. First of all, I'm going to change the color of the button to make it a little more interesting. How about yellow? I mean, these are kind of groovy colors that I'm doing here. And on the button gives me a choice of how it's going to be triggered: normal, hover, pressed. And so I'm just going to leave it hovered. And I'm going to link this to a new page that I'm going to have like a video. So let's try doing that. We're going to go up to where the scenes are, and we're going to press the little plus button. And well, actually, let me delete that. I'm gonna dupe, so I don't have to create a lot of the content. I'm gonna duplicate the scene with the animation. So now I have the same thing again. But I'm gonna call it 2. I mean, you can call your second page anything you want. And if you look at this, this is actually a duplication of the first one. You've got Max Future's blog. But you know, I can delete the stuff on the second page. If you go down here in the timeline, if I just press delete, there goes the button. If I hover over text and delete that, there goes the text. So 2 tracks are gone. I just have the same background. Now, inserting video is pretty easy. So let's see how that's done. Okay, so to insert a video, you go to Elements here, and you click on Video, and it'll launch to the last folder you were looking at. And I did a little movie a while back on the new iPad kiosks, so I'm going to insert that, and I'm going to click Open, and there it is. There's my little video, and you can format it in the Element Inspector, and you know, right now, I mean, I have the video just sort of there as a landing page. Now, if I want the second page to go on when someone clicks this video button. So I go to that video button on the first page, go over to Mouse Action Inspector while highlighting the video button, and Action. Right now it says None. I want to click Jump to Scene, and I want it to jump to Next Scene. And the transition, you can put Instant. I'm going to try Swap, which is kind of a cool animation. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. We can go over here to the preview, and here it comes. So I've got this is the first page, Max Future's blog, and I click video, and this is swap out.
I went myself today to
And the video with sound, I shut the sound off on screen recording here, so you don't hear the sound. But the sound is playing, and so this is a good way to test it out. So now here is some more stuff that you can do. let's say with the video you don't want it to start right away. So you go back over to the middle screen, and you'll see here at the bottom it says iPad Kiosks Movie. That's the video content. And right now it's clicked on autoplay, so that when it goes to the second page, it'll just play automatically. But you might not want that. You might want controls, or you might want it to loop endlessly, or you might want the video to be muted with no audio. So let's put controls. So now, when we preview it, again, this is the first page. Click video, and there's the controls. It's not playing automatically. So it gives you a lot of control. It's very cool. Now, a little trick. It doesn't say Hype can support audio, and some people on its site have been asking, when are you going to support audio? But there is a way to support audio. I found 2 different ways. So let's check them out. Okay, so the first way one easy way to put audio in here, let's say you wanted to animate the, a page with audio, but Hype says you can't do it with audio. Well, it's simple. Just have the audio be part of a video. And what do you mean by that? You might ask Lex here. Well, very simple. You can let's say you don't care what the video looks like, just record yourself talking or record some music with the screen capture of a video or something, and just put a movie file up there. Then go into opacity and click 0. So the video part of the file will never be there, but just the sound. So in this let's take the experiment. I put the sound back on. Let's go to preview. So I've got the Max Future. I got to fix that typo. Max Future's blog. I click video, and so I don't get video, just get sound. Today to the so I could call that something else. Store in New York, which is the flagship store in New York. So that's one way to do audio. It's always crowded. And I checked it out. So how can you add video to your animation? Let's say you want a slide to have audio to animation. So I showed you one way, which is to just put the opacity of the video to 0. But there's an easier way, and Hype doesn't really say that you can do this, but it seems to do it. Basically, I am gonna go over here to a music track. This is a song I have in iTunes, and I just drag it into the scene. Watch this, boom, it's there. And now if you look down here on the tracks, there is a track, and actually Hype views it as a video track, but there's no video to it. So it's treated like a video track. If you go to the inspector elements, it views it as a video track, and it's on autoplay. So, and it, you don't really see it. It's embedded in there. Now let me go to the preview, the test. Here I've got my blog, and it just comes on Max Future's blog, and the audio's playing in the background. And if I go to the next page, it's the video, and that just starts to play automatically. So look, I'm going to go more in depth on how to use Hype. There's all sorts of cool things. So this is just a intro tutorial to Hype. Okay, so thanks for listening to episode 74 of the Apple Podcast. This is June 3rd, 2011, and I'll try to have something out on Monday, June 6th, when the big announcement is made by Steve Jobs and Apple. Thanks for listening, and you can always reach me at maxfuture@gmail.com or at 617-826-9676, and please don't hesitate to leave a nice positive review in iTunes. It helps get the word out on this commercial-free, chit-chat-free podcast. Thanks.